It's now time to welcome our panel to discuss the theme of violence against women in zones of conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause to Melissa Bell, who will be our moderator, Khada Hatem, Céline Bardet, and Nobel Peace Prize nominee Fazaya Koufi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are delighted to be able to pick up where the students just left off. It was such an amazing presentation. And before we start, maybe I'd get each of you to respond to what you just heard. Shall you start?
Well, I think the problem was brilliantly addressed. And the point is that we have so few answers. But maybe this exchange will give us some ideas.
Céline, what's your response? I guess the point about this panel is to talk about women as weapons, violence in war, which of course is as old as war itself and as humanity. What hope did you find in what the young students just had to tell us?
No, I think first of all, I have answers, first of all. Let's be positive. No, there is hope, first of all, because you know what? Now we are here sitting, and this student, they made this work. I mean, we are talking about that. And trust me, that's a huge difference between now and like a decade ago. So that's the first hope. And I found very interesting, and I think we need to really understand that now, each time there is a conflict or a crisis, then sexual violence are coming, you know, just right after. So it is, yeah, pessimistic, but we have hope, and we are all concerned, and this is why we're here today.
Father, maybe to you, as a former deputy speaker of the Afghan parliament, what is your belief in terms of the ability of women to speak of these issues, at least to be spoken of, from an Afghan perspective?
Well, it's very important for us to speak as the woman from Afghanistan. The only weapon for now we have is our voice. So it's important that we raise our voice and we speak. However, I believe that end of a war, an active war, does not necessarily mean peace. As was stated in the speech by this amazing student, women are being targeted and attacked physically, psychologically. Their bodies are being sexually exploited during the war. They have been used as a tool of war. But after the war, they are silenced. So actually, women pay in different stage, they pay different price in conflict. And as I said, not end of any active violence and active war means peace. There is a negative peace as well, and this is what women of Afghanistan experience today. Some probably will argue that there is some level of peace in Afghanistan because there is no active war. But for us, peace is beyond silence of war. For us, peace means liberty, coexistence. Peace means peace of mind.
And Céline, maybe you could pick up on that, because the tool, what you are of course a criminal lawyer, an investigative lawyer as well, uncovering war crimes, but you've also created a tool that allows women who've been victims of such violence to speak. Tell us about that and the importance it has in terms of being able to verbalize these things in a way that we couldn't before.
Yeah, well, there are two things actually. That the thing that, yeah, I like when you say the only thing we have right now is our voice, which is very important, and that's why we need to give voice to people and to try to reach out to really a maximum of people, because be aware that when you have one victim, woman, you heard about the story of one person. Trust me, there are thousands behind that you will never, ever hear about. So we developed a digital tool. It's called Backup, and that's it's not an app, it's a link for security reason. And the idea was, first of all, as you said, I'm an international criminal investigator. And as you know, sexual violence, one of the big issues is the evidence. we don't have evidence, it's difficult to get evidence. So I developed this tool first to enable victims to alert themselves, to be able to secure evidence, even sometimes immediate evidence, like photos and everything. And then I realized, because some of them started to tell me, well, you know, and it was mentioned with the presentation, it became also a tool of voice. And I was really, you know, it pierced my heart really when one day one survivor told me, you know what, I don't need any assistance, I'm okay, I deal with my life, but I want people to know my story and I want people to know that I exist. And this is a form of reparation for me. So I think this is also important in that way, to enable them to tell their story without any intermediary. They tell their story. It can help for securing evidence, and I will not develop, it's too complicated. You can come to me later if you want to know about this tool. And it's very easy, so we can access all conflict zones, even zones where we cannot go physically. And that's also what is important.
I'd love you to pick up on that, because you are, of course, by training a gynecologist obstetrician, but you've created here in Paris a holistic approach to women who've been victims of sexual violence across the range of what might happen to them: domestic abuse, genital mutilation. Why, first of all, the importance of a holistic approach? And what is your view of what we've just heard about the importance of being able to say things individually and as a society being prepared to hear them?
Yes, we created this special approach because we are convicted that we need to take care about the whole question: medical, psychological, social, and with justice. So we welcome many victims, many foreign victims, sometimes seeking for asylum in France. And what we can say is that rape always gives a very strong attack on self-esteem, and created a very special post-traumatic stress, which we need to cure, because these women can't live normally. It looks strange to me that these women just wanted to exist, because usually they need a lot of care. And this is what we're trying to provide, because we need a lot of doctors, nurses, psychologists, social workers. It costs a lot of money, and usually the different ministries that are concerned are not really willing to pay all this money. But we are really convinced that this is a very, very important action. And we also created a shelter for young women who suffered violence, and this kind of violence, and the continuum of violence, which begins when you are born in not a good country. Sometimes you are mutilated, sometimes you are forced to marry someone you hate, you have children, they die because of bad conditions. Then you come to Europe and you face a lot of violence during your migration journey. And then you face another kind of violence, especially with the French organization. And so you are completely destroyed. And we need to offer them care and shelter.
Fawzia, we're listening, of course, to the incredibly complex stories of women, either here in the global north with access to, as you just described, Hada, the cost, the care, the thought that's gone into taking into account these many needs. Tell us about, from the point of view of a country like Afghanistan, though, where now it is impossible to hear women's voices at all. Where do you even start?
Yes, Melissa, when sometimes I listen to all these figures and I try to, resonate with the world that I'm living now and the real world that I'm coming from, I hardly can resonate the figures, because where I come from, women cannot speak in the public because their voice is regarded as intimacy. For 3 consecutive years, women cannot go to school. They cannot go to university. They cannot go to work. 0 woman participation in political and social life in Afghanistan. And for many people, they see this as a human rights issue, which obviously is the severe human rights violation of our century. But for me and for us who have lived there, it's beyond human rights violation. It's the matter of security of a country. When you suppress the woman in the country, it's a matter of economic prosperity if you allow women to work. And that's why you saw before, the journalists who traveled, the poverty, 90-something% of people live in the poverty line in Afghanistan. When I talk to you all, that women cannot speak, probably it's one of the things you heard about Afghanistan. But can you for a minute feel or put yourselves in the shoes of those women, put your feet in the shoes of those women, and think that you are controlled for your gender? Your outfit is controlled, what you think is controlled, what you do is controlled. And this is happening in a time here that we talk about AI, about the advancement of the worlds and technology in the world. But we think in the other part of the world it's okay. Yesterday, actually, we celebrated in the UN 23rd years of Security Council Resolution 1325. And I think it's time for us, as the three wonderful students stated, to remind ourselves of a collective failure of the world, particularly towards women of Afghanistan, but in all conflict zones. You know, last year only, out of 16 local dialogues, only one included women. Well, if you talk about how much women pay the price, as a negotiator, directly negotiated with the Taliban, I was given the understanding that Taliban have changed. There are Taliban 2.0, and we need to talk. We definitely need to talk. We definitely need to negotiate, because without that, you cannot understand the perspective of the other side. We need to use diplomatic tools, but with what condition? With what principles? It's very important to set principles in the beginning and include all sides, including women. When you exclude women, it's a vicious circle of war repeating itself. Because for us, Melissa, war is not just a political signing of agreement. For us, peace is not just a political signing of agreement. For us, peace is more than that. For us, peace is the fact that we are accepted as a human being, which we are not now. And everybody in the world think it's okay. It's Afghanistan. It will not get to our borders. So let's forget about it.
I'd love both of you to respond to that, because it sort of picks up on where the students left off. The idea that the physical subjugation of women in wartime is also the consequence of their lack of voice before, and their lack of voice often, as in the case of Afghanistan so far, afterwards. If you would pick up, Céline.
No, but I think, well, honestly, I mean, if you ask me, I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. But as you mentioned, the situation in Afghanistan, I think people care. The situation in Afghanistan is far the worst that we ever seen, because clearly, as you said, it's erasing human beings because they are women. And of course, it is closely interconnected with the question of the way we look at women in a society. We work, for example, a lot also on how terrorist groups use sexual violence, and it was mentioned sexual enslavement and etc. It's also the way women are looked, by this group. There are lots of things, and yes, it is interconnected. And I hear, because I worked a lot in Afghanistan. It's a country I know very well. It's terrible. I mean, what is happening now? I think lots of people can't stand that. The question is, when I said it's complicated, the question is what we can do now at the moment, what the countries can do, what the UN is doing, what the powerful country can do, because it's not even the UN. The UN, there are countries, there are states. So, but yes, it is very much, when I look at, for example, what happened on October 7th also, the way there were, it's the first time of my life I've seen that, like post-mortem mutilation, and especially on women's body, with really a high level of barbaric. I'm taking this example because we're working on it at the moment, but we work also in northeast Nigeria with Boko Haram, and you can see that there's something that I can't fully comprehend, and I'd like to, somebody who could give me the answer, that there is this, power and willingness to not only reduce women to non-existent, but, to...
More than that.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to violence and in a conflict, and as it was rightly said, to take power over what you will consider your enemy, then you will target also especially women, and you will really, profane things, really destroy the bodies. So there is something in that even myself, I do not understand.
A hatred that is beyond comprehension?
Sorry?
A hatred that is beyond comprehension?
I think, and because you are a woman, so I don't know, for what you represent, for the place you have in society, at a point, because we're talking about conflict-related sexual violence, okay, what we're talking about extreme violence, We're talking about rapes committed with really extreme violence, and there is something beside that again, I'm a lawyer. I don't have maybe all the skills that I would need, but I don't understand that. So yes, I think we need to have a collective, the point is, I think we really need to have a collective, debate, question about that. And yes, just to finish and answer your question, so of course, at the end of the day, it is interconnected with our society. Like, I'm living in France. I am, so spoiled being here, and I can talk about EA and many things. I don't have the same, preoccupation than others, but this is especially for that reason that here, we need to stay united as women. We need to have this debate, and we need to try to understand why this is happening. Really, we need to.
Hada, I love your views.
Oh, I just wanted to add that we don't need wars to erase women. I just want to talk about South Asia, where they kill young girls, newborn girls, or babies, fetuses girls, because they're girls. So it's a question of value, it's a question of power. And we can find frequently in the history about profanating bodies. It's not specific to women, but killing women even before they are born is something very violent. Don't you think so, Céline?
Very violent. What then, Fawzia, do you believe needs to be done, can be done, beyond raising awareness as we are today, beyond women being able to speak, people being able to hear? What more in order for things to change?
Yeah, Melissa, and thank you for highlighting this. I know you are probably tired and fed up of hearing about Afghanistan, because for more than 4 decades you heard about Afghanistan, and you had your troops who invested blood and treasure in Afghanistan. So the question from you probably is, what could be done? What could have been done differently? I think what could have been done differently is you have supported us, and you have supported yourself by being in Afghanistan for 20 years, as a result of which we have, the society has changed enormously. It's a progressive society, and today, like, even among your audience, there are many young girls from Afghanistan, and even young boys that have been educated, and that they have now left Afghanistan. So your investment was the kind of right investment. Probably many people argue that, war is never the solution, but that war was for a peace. We fought for 4 decades for peace. Can you believe it? We were in war, and we continue to be in war for peace. So what could be done next? Because you have done everything you could. Probably that's the question some of you have in mind. Now, I think what you didn't do is you did not empower people of Afghanistan to be their leaders. You did everything on our behalf. You fought on our behalf. You negotiated with the Taliban on our behalf, without including us to be meaningfully on the negotiation table. So what can you do now? I don't know how many of you actually come from countries where you have feminist foreign policy. Can you raise your hand? Feminist foreign policy. I gave you a minute to think. Yes. Okay. You talk to your ministers who are in charge of feminist foreign policy and ask them, in a time where there is gender apartheid happening, and I'm not even using this as a political term, it is meaningful exclusion of women from all spheres. And when this guy ran, I was actually scared, because recently I'm being threatened that you might have an acid attack. So when he ran, I was like, maybe he's coming after me. You see how this is the fear we are living in. So you can hold your ministers accountable and tell them, what have you done for Afghanistan? Codifying gender apartheid is not only for our interest, but it's for the interest of all women around the world, because we all face some level of discrimination in our life. This will happen today. Young girls especially. Remember, this generation, they did a lot of things to change things for you. Now you need to do things to change things for your next generation. Without that, the world order must be respected. There are certain rules and institutions set up to keep the rule of the order of the world. We need to make use of them. So apartheid is the first. I request you to hold your ministers accountable for recognizing, not recognizing, or codifying gender apartheid. Now, I want to see how many are you from Muslim countries or Muslim women? Okay, that's good. You know the first verse in Quran says, Iqra, means read. But women in Afghanistan today are deprived from reading and writing under the name of religion. You know these radical groups, Boko Haram, Taliban, any other group, they actually target education first, because an educated mother will never allow his son to pick up a gun and fight. She will encourage her children to use pen, the same way. I have two daughters who are both here. When I became a single mother at age 26, many people told me, oh, you will not be able to take care of your two daughters. But my daughters are very smart. Sometimes I'm like, they're too aggressive and too strong for me to handle. If I wasn't educated, probably I would have to remarry somebody else. My daughters would have been with stepfather. I don't know what happened to them. So education, they target that. They target that. Please challenge your governments on why they're not pressurizing Taliban to allow girls to go to school. Because they're doing that as a weapon. They know that a repressed Afghanistan will always say yes to Taliban. This is the first. The second, if whatever you can do, we have schools in Afghanistan, across Afghanistan, we have students. I'm on daily basis in touch with them. If you want to support them, reach out to me later.
Hada, I'd love you to pick up on that. The question of the change that we've seen just in the course of our generations, because Fawzia touched on it a moment ago. You've been fighting for the recognition, a holistic approach to the wounds of women and violence that's inflicted on them. What change have you seen over the course of your career and your fight for that to happen? I was struck listening to the young students earlier by how much things have changed over the course of the last few years in terms of just an understanding of these issues. Have you seen that as well?
Yes, the understanding is huge, actually. When we began to think about violence and health, which was a new concept in France, we didn't find any echo with especially the Ministry of Health in France. But today, it's a very common concept, and I'm glad to see that young doctors, they join our organizations and they say, I want to work the way you do, because I understand that taking care of human beings needs a global understanding, especially about the violence they could face when they were very young. We know today that if you face different kinds of violence when you're a very young person, if you're a human girl or a boy, your health will be affected. You will face many chronic illness, and you have, I think, 10 times more frequently getting suicide. So it's a very important question of public health everywhere.
And awareness, that people understand how complex and long-lasting.
Yes, and they want to engage themselves in this new topic.
Céline, as an investigator and someone who's trying to use the tools of technology, not just to bring awareness, but to help victims to speak, have you seen a change over the course of your career in terms of not just the ability of people to come forward and speak, but the receptiveness of people to listen, and the ability, therefore, of governments to get involved?
No, but of course, first of all, you know, Denis Mukwege, who is this Congolese surgeon, he set up Panzi Hospital in 1999, okay? 1999, yeah? Okay, with this holistic approach. So, I mean, there are lots of countries, not us, although we think we are so smart and etc., who set up this system. Why? Because he understood rapidly, and he's a doctor, but he understood that beside the issue, medical issue, psychosocial issue, etc., there is the issue of law. For example, and by the way, just to what you said, it's the survivor who said, okay, I want my story to be heard, I don't need anything else, it's because it's people who have been taken care of, okay? And I was outlining the need for them just to say I exist, how important it is for them. But you cannot, for example, because technology is not an answer to everything. It's not the point, you know. What we are doing, my NGO, is not technology. It's not one tool. It's so many other things. But one of the problem is that many victims, and again, I'm talking from the place of conflict-related sexual violence. That's my job. That's what I'm doing. I'm not talking about the whole women problematic in the world. We can talk about that because I have my opinion on it, but they cannot, yeah, we don't have time for, you know, we need like weeks. But no, but you know, they cannot go to services. Even in France, actually, women are asked to go lodge a complaint. You need to go to the police and you need to go to the medical. You are traumatized, you are ashamed. On conflict zone, you are insecure. You cannot leave your house. You cannot. So this is also a way, this tool, to coordinate these services and have this servicing coming to this person in a safe manner. And we create safe place. And I think this is all of this. So yes, I see things changing. Lots of countries, especially was mentioned Africa, I worked a lot on the African continent, they are starting to do things. But what is happening also is, as you said, and I think this is something we need to, is this kind of big backlash. I mean, we are still a country, France, where, and I think it's the next panel, we can talk about feminist policy. But, you know, I worked in Sahel, for example, and I saw how everything changed, and that there is this big backlash in terms of right and equality right and gender rights. So there is a kind of now fragmented world, according to me, that one who wants to go, you know, toward more equality, more diversity, and etc., and the other. And the question is, what do we do with that? I mean, for me, this is a profound question, how we address that. Because the extreme example is the Taliban that come up to power, and at the beginning we saw, okay, maybe there's a new Taliban, and they're going to be kind, yeah, 2.0, they're going to be okay, maybe. And they are worse than worse than worse. And what do we do? So, yeah. Accountability, but who can do that?
Sadly, we're coming to the end of our time, but I do read in everything you've said, somehow the beginning of some hope, at least, that these conversations have begun, that we're here today talking about it, that we heard from the young students of Sciences Po earlier on the fact that today we're able better to understand the effects, the causes, and for women to be able to use their voices, and to go back to the wonderful poetry we heard a moment ago, that the truth will break the cracks. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you.